Okay, we're on page 47. So we're in Shabbat. Let's discuss one of the great mitzvot of Shabbat, and that is to bring in the Shabbat with candles. Very, very good. Or actually, fire. Doesn't have to be candles. It could be oil as well, but to bring in the Shabbat with light. That's really what we're talking about. So where does this come from? So let's begin page 47. We have a lot to do. Let's get everyone focused. Computers only open to blank pages or books, please, okay? So the Rambam in Hilchot Shabbat says, Hadleket ner b'Shabbat, chova. There's an obligation. This is not some nice little custom we have. It is an obligation to light the candles for Shabbat. Okay? V'chad nashim, v'chad nashim. Men or women. People think it's a female mitzvah. We'll see why women are the ones that actually take on this mitzvah. But if there's no women, men have to do it. It's a mitzvah to have light in the house on Shabbat. You should have some light in your home on Shabbat. We shouldn't walk around in the dark. Let's say you don't have any money. Okay? You can't afford. Shoel al petchav lekach shemen. He says, you know what? Then go begging. It's that important. Go to people's houses, the Rambam, and say, listen, Shabbat's coming. I don't have any money. Please have some money for Shabbat. Shabbat is worth going out, knocking people's doors in order to get the lights, the oil, in order to do this. Or malakaner. Okay? And go to the door and do that. So you're short of food. You can't afford it. It's like, okay, whatever that is, go and get lights for Shabbat. The klal oneg Shabbat. Because it falls under a very important category of Shabbat enjoyment, which is called oneg Shabbat. Oneg Shabbat we spoke about. That is what Shabbat is called. Correct? Oneg. You should have pleasure on Shabbat. You should have pleasure. Part of the mitzvah of Shabbat is to enjoy it. Part of the enjoyment is to have light in your home. Why would light in my home have anything to do with enjoyment? Well, firstly, if there's no light in the house, what happens? You can't see anyone and you bump into each other. So you need to have light in your house. That's number one. Number two, we're going to see Rashi in a moment, who says that you need to have light to enjoy the food you eat. Right? If you sit in the dark eating food, then how are you going to enjoy Shabbat? One second. Isn't there a law that you can't light a fire on Shabbat? One of the 39 melachot we spoke about. One of them was Mavir, you can't make a fire on Shabbat. Problem? Gisela, what are you going to say to that? What are you going to say to that? You can't make a fire on Shabbat. The Rambam saying you need to have candles in your house on Shabbat. What's the answer?
The 24-hour candles.
You have candles you light from before Shabbat comes in. Exactly. Before Shabbat comes in, you light candles and they're lit on Shabbat. Now, there were groups of Jews in history who learned out when it says, don't make a fire in your house on Shabbat, which the Torah actually says. They said, oh, that means you can't have any fire in your house. They sat in the cold. These are the Karaites. They sat in the cold, in the dark, eating cold food on Shabbat. Terrible, right? They missed out the whole oneg aspect of Shabbat because the Torah says can't make a fire, but the Gemara says that's true. But you can have a fire that's made before Shabbat to keep food hot and warm and to bring light into the house. Right? They disappeared. No more Karaites anymore. Maybe some weird group in California, but they're gone. Chalas, all done. Okay. For us, the Rambam's telling us you can make a fire in your house on Shabbat, and you should have light in your house. So you can enjoy, don't bump into people, look at the food you're eating. You can't, eating in the dark is not enjoyable. That's what he says. And what's that? That is the oneg aspect of Shabbat. And not only that, this lighting isn't just in order just to bring light. There's a blessing that goes before it. It's a spiritual obligation. And what's the blessing? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvah v'zivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Right? Sanctified us with the commandments and told us to do this mitzvah. This is an actual mitzvah to welcome in the Shabbat with light. And the fact that Rambam spoke about it that way, that if you can't afford food, make sure you still have candles, means it's a really important and special mitzvah. And that's what Rashi says. Says Rashi on the Gemara, Harag Neb Shabbat Chova Kavod Shabbat Hu. Not only does it bring pleasure, there's another thing when it comes to Shabbat, and that is kavod. Right? You honor the Shabbat. Right? You honor something. How do you bring honor to the Shabbat? She'en suda chashuva el makom or kein yamama. He said, you can't have a big, fancy, delicious meal with no lights on. Not only does that take away from the pleasure, it takes away from the honor. Right? You want to have light in order to show that you're honoring the day itself. So there's two things that these lights are doing so far. One is bringing oneg, right, to enjoy, have pleasure. And two, to bring kavod, to bring honor. Yeah. Which we're going to see is a major part of Shabbat, to bring honor to it. Okay. Now, according to what we read so far, how many candles should we light? What?
I'm eating four, I don't know. One for each member of the family?
What we just read so far, from just the Rambam and the Rashi, how many lights should we have? Enough to?
Keep all the stuff you can
Right, see. Right? That's what you need. So one candle could suffice, and probably does. However, it has become a custom to light at least 2 candles. At least 2 candles. And then there's another custom, which people do, to light 1 candle for every... Right. Very good. Every child in the house. So we have 2, and then each child we add more and more. So Meital, how many kids in your house? 2. How many candles do your mummy light?
4.
4. That's right. Why? So the first 2 she lights are for, now we spoke about this expression before, Shamor v'Zachor. Shamor v'Zachor. That's what the Gemara says. Now if you remember, these 2 words are the words that are used to describe the Shabbat in the 10 Commandments. Shamor, we said, this is important, means to guard the Shabbat. Zachor means to remember. To guard and to remember. Yeah? Now, these are also code words. It says, Shamor to Shabbat, Zachor Shabbat. How do you guard the Shabbat? By not breaking the laws. So the word Shamor is a code word in the Torah, which means don't break any of the 39 malachot, 39 forbidden creative activities of Shabbat. That's Shamor. Oh, what's Zachor? How do you remember in Judaism? We mentioned this last class. Anyone remember? Zachor, you remember by keeping the positive mitzvot, which includes lighting the candles, which involves eating 3 meals on Shabbat, which involves making Kiddush, which involves Havdalah. All the positive mitzvot of Shabbat fall under this. Some are Torah, some are rabbinic, but that falls Zachor. So these 2 words are just, they're saying guard and remember. Guard by not breaking the Shabbat, and remember by doing the positive mitzvot. Says the Shulchan Aruch, oh, now we got it. 2 candles. Each one of those candles, and the Gemara talks about this as well, is to remind ourselves of each one of these. One is for Shamor, and one is for Zachor. And that's how we honor Shabbat. They are a testimony, a remembrance to that. So, 2 candles is usually the minimum. 1 candle is actually enough. But 2 candles is the minimum. And then there's a custom to add 1 more for each child. But if you do that at home, that's a wonderful thing. If you travel somewhere and light candles, you go away for Shabbat, right? You go on vacation, you're at a friend's house, you light 2 candles. You should light 2 candles. If you have 9 children, you don't have to light 11 candles, right? Because that's a lot. Okay, when you're traveling, I'm saying. So you light 2. And when you're at home, you light the ones that you light. Yeah? Oh, but these are all customs. Lighting a candle, halacha, do a mitzvah on it. And a very special mitzvah as well. Okay? another reason for 2 candles. Turn over the page 48. And that is, we do a lot of things on Shabbat in double. Says the Shulchan Aruch, he says, you'll see there's 2 rams that are offered. There is a mizmor and a shir, a song, and a second one for a day of Shabbat. There's 2 loaves of bread. But that's more important to us. Right? You have 2 loaves of bread on your table on Shabbat for each meal. Nachon? What's that called? What are those 2 loaves of bread called? Lechem Mishnah. Write this down. You can hear this expression a lot. You gotta know what it means. Lechem Mishnah. Lechem means bread, a whole loaf. Now we use challah for this, but anything which is a whole loaf, you can use a roll. It's got to be whole. Okay, that's it to honor Shabbat. Mishnah, a pita would work as well, absolutely. But cannot be cut. After me, the blessing, you can cut it, but it has to be a shalem, we call it. So lechem is bread. Mishnah, now the word Mishnah actually means double. It means double. It means double. Lechem Mishnah. We see that when it comes to, when we talk about Mishnah Torah, the book of Deuteronomy. Devarim is called Mishnah Torah, right? Because duet is a doubling. Nachon? A duet is 2 people. Same thing. It's Mishnah Torah because it's a repetition of the first 4 books. Many of the laws in the 5th book of the Torah are repetitions of the first 4 books. So it's called Mishnah Torah. Deuteronomy, the 5th book, because it repeats a lot of the laws and ideas that came beforehand. Why it does that is interesting conversation, not for now, more about preparation for entering into Israel. So we'll leave that aside. So Mishnah means to double up. So we have Lechem Mishnah, we have 2 loaves of bread, okay? And it says, the Shulchan, and it seems to be, we have 2 candles, he says, to keep with the same theme, okay? Because we don't want just one. We want to double everything on Shabbat. And we're going to see that it's, and we mentioned this last time, there's a special mitzvah that falls under Oneg Shabbat to buy your best food for Shabbat. Alright? You should walk around on Monday and be like, wow, what a great piece of meat. I'm going to buy this in honor of Shabbat on Monday. That's the Zachor, right? And then Tuesday you find a better piece of meat. You're like, I'm going to eat Monday's, the one I bought yesterday now, during the week, and this one's for Shabbat. This is how you honor Shabbat. And your best clothing, you buy a nice pair of shoes on Monday, you're like, oh, what a beautiful pair of shoes. These are for Shabbat. Then the next day you find a better pair. Okay, you know what? These ones for Shabbat. Those ones will be my weekday ones. Right? Finest clothing, finest food, all of this, including these candles, falls under the mitzvah of Oneg Shabbat. And by the way, I cannot even begin to tell you what a very important and special mitzvah this is. It's really, really, it's epic. All right? As we mentioned in the last class, all the mitzvot in the Torah are compared to Shabbat. Shabbat is equal to all the mitzvot in the entire Torah. That means if you had if you have Shabbat on one side of the scale and all the other 612 mitzvot on the other side, Shabbat is equal to all of them. The whole collection. That's why we actually refer to a Jew, are they Shomer Shabbat? Right? That's like, are they observant? We don't say, are they a sukkah dweller? Right? We don't say, are they a matzah eater? We say, oh, you're Shomer Shabbat. Right? Shabbat is really what it's all about. You get the greatest honor to Hashem, to the Torah, by doing this. Okay? So we'll see inside, page 48. He says, if you can only afford Shabbat candle or wine for Kiddush, the wine is better. Sorry, the candle is better. Okay? You only have a certain amount of money. Right? Wine used to be expensive. Right? Oil for candles expensive. People couldn't afford this stuff all the time. Your great-great-great-grandparents. Right now you got a store, but it wasn't like that. For hundreds, thousands of years it was expensive. So let's say you only had money. I can either buy candles, or oil for the candles, or I can buy wine. Which wine do I get? You buy the candles. The candles is more important than the yayin. Why would that be? Because the candles give you something that wine cannot. And what's that? What can candles give us that the wine cannot? Light. And what does that mean? It brings us Shalom Bayit. Shalom Bayit. Shalom bayis. Why? Peace in the home. Why? Because when there's light, people are happy. If it's dark, it's depressing and it's dreary. And although wine is good, right, takes the edge off, that's not going to do the job. That's not going to do the job. So the candles, on a basic level, right, bring joy to the family. That's what Rashi says. No one has to sit in the dark. So candles are the most important mitzvah, and actually exceed the yain for kiddush, the wine we make. Or as the old joke goes, how do you have shalom bayit? Your wife asks you for something, you buy it, you have shalom. You all get that one?
It's not a joke though, it's true.
It's true, you're right. Oh, you know that. That's right. Yeah, it's not a joke, it's absolutely true. It's a true statement there. Shalom bayit. Okay, but it's a joke. Okay. So, that's the physical aspect. But there's going to be a spirit. Like that joke, Ruth? You get that? Shalom bayit? Bayit, you have shalom? Like that? Okay. Light is also symbolic. Now we spoke about this when we spoke about Torah. Torah is light. Let's look at page 48. Please follow inside. He says, there's something else about darkness. Darkness separates us. Right? Light brings us together. So we don't hang out in pitch black. We hang out in rooms there's light. But it's also symbolic for bringing people together and cooperation. Okay? And we want that to happen especially on Shabbat. He says, Teva choshechu mafrid bein chalkei abriya. Darkness separates the world. Right? Darkness, that's where the word for nighttime is erev. Erev. The word erev actually means murav, mixed up. Right? You can't see what's going on, everything's mixed up. So erev for nighttime, ayin resh veit. Erev means mixed up, murav. I can't see what's going on, I can't enjoy life. So light physically allows us to hang out, but also spiritually, emotionally, it allows us to come together as well. It creates a unity. Now that is important for Shabbat, because Shabbat is all about bringing unity, one person to another. As well as that, so that's one thing that light represents, unity. But light also represents the neshama, the soul of a person. The soul of a person. Let me show you something very, very interesting when it comes to this. Check this out. A light, a candle, and the candle, traditionally, candles work, but oil is the best way to do it. That's the traditional way of doing it. Oil in Hebrew is shemen, right? Shemen. So you need the oil. What else do you need in order to light? You need the wick. The wick. You've got to draw the oil up and set it on fire. What's a wick in Hebrew? The petila. Right? The petila is the wick. And then you have the light that comes from it. So there's three parts to it. And the light is the ner. So you have the ner, which is the actual light, the flame. You have the petila, which is the wick. And you have the shemen, which is the oil. And you take the first three letters, and you get nefesh, the soul. The soul of a person is the nefesh. Okay? Ner, petila, shemen, you get the nefesh of the Jew. Why? Because a person's soul is compared to light. The neshama, the nefesh of a person, is considered and compared, is symbolic of light. Which is why, how do we commemorate the soul of a person? Every year we light a candle, right? A ner neshama, or in Yiddish, a yahrzeit candle. Why do we do that? Because we remember that soul by the wick. Okay? And the flame is like physical, but not physical. Right? Just like the neshama, the soul fills up a person's body. And very importantly, this is actually one reason that Jews, and I don't know anyone else that does this, shackle when they pray. When involved in spiritual pursuits, they do this. Have you seen people do this? At the Western Wall, maybe, or in your synagogues, they're like head banging. Why? Because the neshama is like a flame that flickers. So too, when people do this, it shows that their neshama, their soul, is flickering like a flame. That's actually one of the interesting reasons that when we pray, we don't just stand still, right? There's a certain movement we make because there's the soul flickering inside us. And these aren't my words. These are the words of King Solomon, Shlomo Melech, on page 48. He says, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam Chafes Kol Chadrei Beten. The soul of a person is the candle of God, searching all the inner chambers of a person. Okay? So we see that this comparison of the soul to a candle to light goes right back and really is the perfect metaphor. Yeah? So how do we connect it to Shabbat? So he says, Shekol Olam, the entire world is this Sfas Emes. Yesh lo chibur v'shayach lekedusha. The whole world has a connection and relationship with holiness. However, on Shabbat, mitgala, the light shines. So all week we're running around, we're busy, everything is darkened, right? Life is challenged. Shabbat comes, and the true light within us gets to shine forth. Okay? I had a beautiful analogy from one of my great teachers, Rav Pinchas Yom, in a book he wrote, and he got it from somewhere. But he says, if I invite you into a room during the week, yeah, I invite you to a room, stum, and the lights are off, and I say, I want you to find a pin on the floor. Could you find a pin on the floor in the room? In the dark? It's possible. It's very difficult, right? You have to fool around, you have to go through the whole room, feeling everything.
We should try. We should get Eleanor to do it. We're all easy process.
You know what though, Eleanor? On Shabbat, the lights are turned on. It's much easier to find the pin. Any accomplishment, spiritual accomplishments you want on Shabbat, which is why every mitzvah on Shabbat is worth 1,000 times more than any other mitzvah during the week. You want to learn something, you want to hear something you heard about, your prayers are worth so much more on Shabbat. Because your soul is turned on, the light is now shining out. The lights are turned on. So anything you want to achieve spiritually on Shabbat, there's your opportunity. That is the time to do it. Right? You are able to receive the light. Okay. So let's just recap. This is very important information. We said that there's a mitzvah to light candles. There's a mitzvah, we said, a tradition to light 2 candles. Shamor v'zachor, we said, yeah? We said 2 is Mishnah. We said a number of things are doubled, and it shows plenty. We said this mitzvah of lighting candles is so important, you can only afford wine or candles, buy the candles, buy the oil, light the Shabbat lights. Why? Shalom, buy it. People don't sit in the dark. Yeah? It creates but light also represents, first of all, unity and the neshama. And Shabbat is all about unity. Shabbat, shalom. The word shalom also means shalem, which means together. Unity, whole, complete. But it also represents the neshama. Because your personal spiritual light gets turned on once a week. And that's on Shabbat. More than any other day. More than any other Jewish holiday. It's all about Shabbat. The question you have to figure out now is, then why, if, as the Rambam says, and he's right, men and women have the same obligations of Shabbat, every aspect, the meals and that, and he says when it comes to lighting candles, men are chayav and women are chayav, obligated, then why exactly do women, oh, the lights just came on, why exactly do the women light the lights for the house? Who makes kiddush in your home, generally speaking? The man makes, unless he's out. Then if I travel on way for Shabbat, my wife makes kiddush. She has to. She fills a cup and says, Yom HaShishi, right? The woman does it. Then why, pray tell, do women light the candles? So in order to understand that, we have to travel back in history. We have to travel right back. And let's see why this mitzvah has gravitated towards women doing that. Would anyone like to take a guess based upon everything we've discussed so far this semester? Although it's our first semester together, you're all experts in Judaism at this point. Why do you think? Leah, what do you think?
Because Sarah had this mitzvah to light.
Wow.
When she was with
Very, very nice. We've seen that light are matriarch. Okay, but why did she do it then? Why did Sarah Menu, why did her lights last for so long? Why does she do it? You're right, by the way. You're absolutely right. But that is evidence of the point. But what is the point? Eileen, you with us today? What do you think? Why would it be? You can figure it out. I'm impressed. Anyone? Well, spiritual light, the spiritual light of the house comes from the woman. She brings a spiritual light into the house. If that's true, if her teachings, the Torah Timecha, the spiritual guidance of the Jewish home, is from the woman, she adds a very important part, more than the man, by the way, in many respects in the home, then that's going to be important. Now we have to go back, because there was one woman who extinguished a light. And who was that? Chava, Eve, that's right. When a Jewish woman kindles the lights, she consecrates the weekday time and adds spiritual illumination to the world. Because remember, women are very much bound into time. They are connected to time. Right? The whole body is connected to a certain time frame. So women have a spiritual access point to time in general. Okay? When Adam and Eve extinguished the light of the world, which Chava was guilty of as well, if you remember, right? Because of Chava, because of Eve, Adam and Eve were thrown out of Garden Eden. But they were both involved in it. But she extinguished that light through the sin. It was left to women to bring the light back. And one way they bring the spiritual light back that Eve, the Chava, extinguished is by lighting these candles. So these candles come as a fix-up for the original hate of the original sin of Eve. Okay? Don't worry, Adam got punished as well, and men pay for that as well. So much so, one second, that this mitzvah should be done with tremendous joy. And that's what the Zohar says. He says that a woman kindling Shabbat candles with joy in her heart brings shalom to her, to all of the world. Brings peace on earth, brings health and happiness to her family, and is blessed with children who brighten the world with the tradition of Judaism. And therefore, the Jewish should be very, very careful. Never, ever to miss this mitzvah. Right? It's so special, this mitzvah. Right? Different mitzvah do different things. We spoke, they're not all the same. This mitzvah brings shalom to the world. It brings shalom to the home. It brings shalom to the children. It brings great peace into the world. You do not want to miss out on that. And therefore, no matter how hard your week has been, a woman gets ready, she prepares herself, she looks good, she smells good, and she has great joy in her heart. Actually, there's a tradition to connect one mitzvah with another mitzvah, which I recommend, especially in this case. And it brings great salvation to a person. And that is to give. Many people have my wife does, have a tzedakah box next to the candles. Anyone seen this before? And right before they light the candles, they give some tzedakah. There's an idea of connecting two mitzvah together. It's a great spiritual connection to do that. All right? You put in the candle, you put in the money, and you light the candles. Okay? And once they light the candles, they begin Shabbat. Now, not necessarily, by the way. Let's say a woman is a technical halachic point. Let's say a woman wants to drive to shul, erev Shabbat, before Shabbat. But she wants to light the candles because she's going to eat. You have to light where you eat, right? Because you have to enjoy the candles. Actually, where you're eating, the candle should be right next to it. On the table, next to the table, that's where you should really light. Yeah? So you can enjoy the light of the candles while you eat. And look at them. Let's say a woman's driving to shul erev Shabbat, which happens sometimes. You have to go somewhere, but they're going to come back to the house. So what she can do is she can light the candles. Have in mind, I'm not bringing Shabbat with this lighting, right? And when Shabbat begins, right, with sunset, yeah, then Shabbat begins with me.
Is that what 18 minutes of?
No, it's not. This is nothing to do with that.
Oh.
This is way before, right? This is before the candle lighting time, before everything, right? And she's like, it's now an hour for Shabbat. There's a mitzvah to add time on Shabbat, so she lights the candles. And she has in mind that I'm not bringing Shabbat with the candle lighting, right? If she doesn't stipulate this, then actually she does, I believe. Then she lights the candles, she's like, oh, now I'm going to light the candles, right? I'm not going to drive to shul. And when the synagogue brings a Shabbat, right, which then it's going to, Shabbat comes in. For me. I think that's also possible. But otherwise, she lights, she brings the Shabbat. Now the men don't. If they go to shul, they bring in Shabbat when they daven, when they say Vaycholu in the synagogue on Shabbat, or Mizmor Shir, they bring in Shabbat that way. So actually men and women, husband and wife, actually bring in Shabbat maybe slightly different times. And that's okay. But it's a mitzvah to bring Shabbat a little bit early. Right? You don't have to bring Pesach in early. You don't have to bring Yom Kippur in, bring Shabbat in early. Because we love it so, we get so much pleasure from it. We want to bring it in early and take it out a little bit later. If you bring it in 1 second before and take it out right away, how much are you really enjoying it, you know? So that's the mitzvah. Says the Rambam, following sideways, page 49, halfway down. Mitzvah aseh min Torah. It is a positive biblical commandment to verbally lekadesh Yom Shabbat, to bring in Shabbat b'devarim, with words, as it says, Zochor es Yom Shabbat lekadsho. You should remember Shabbat. How do you remember? By saying it. By saying it. Klomar zachareu zechira Shabbat v'kiddush. You should do it with praise and sanctity. V'tzarech l'schora b'chaniso v'yaso. And you do that with the Shabbat coming in and Shabbat going out. Okay? So that's kiddush as it comes in, right? And havdalah as it goes out. That's how we do it. We welcome in the Shabbat with words, and we take out the Shabbat with words. Two very, very important mitzvot. Okay? Why do we use wine at all then? Why do we do it over wine? And the answer is because wine tastes good. And it makes us happy. And we enjoy it. Not at your age, because you're not 21 yet, so you'll be drinking grape juice. I see a little bit of guilt in those eyes over there. Uh-huh.
The real mitzvah is with wine.
What?
The real mitzvah is with
The real mitzvah is actually with wine.
So I have a
The real mitzvah is actually with wine, and ideally red wine, ideally.
not rosé.
It's also okay. Yeah.
Why do you wear wines?
From you.
Eleanor?
I only use grape juice.
Grape juice for you and a little cup of, not too much grape juice. I see you drink grape juice, you may get too drunk just on the grape juice. You have a little cup that big. I'm watching you.
Grape juice gives.
Mix it with
I
water.
would get more.
Mix it with water. Cut the grape juice with water so it's not too toxic for you. In Spain, right, everyone drinking wine. My goodness, I'm drinking by the age of 5 years old, right, Ruth? They're like knocking that stuff back. What's the wine called over there?
We have the same wines that here.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh.
But they make sangria over
Sangria, is that Spanish sangria? Is that? Oh, sangria. I'm not gonna- They're pouring each other's mouths. Not for you, Ruth. You're 18, so you've never tasted wine before in your life then? Is it, oh, a second, how old do you have to be in Spain to drink wine? 18? 19?
18.
18.
Oh wait, how old do you actually have to be? 18.
It's saying only America's 21. In England it's 18 as well. Yeah.
In England is
Probably
18.
English
18.
teenagers are so crazy. They're nuts.
We get out of our way. And then by the time we get to college we're like done with it. It's not such a big thing anymore.
I heard that.
It is true.
My
They
family
should
friends
change
from
it
Spain,
here.
They have their life so much put together later on.
But you know what? I'll tell you something. Just as a serious point. When we grow up as Jews with wine in our homes, wine is used for alcohol is used for Shabbat, for Chagim, so it takes on a spiritual component. So for us, right, not just while they're drinking, they're getting drunk, but for the Jewish people, wine from the earliest age, right, as in a baby is given wine in his mouth, is always connected to holiness. Right? Why is it connected to holiness? We use wine at times of change. A baby's about to become Jewish. The weekday's about to become the Brit Milah. The weekday's about to become Shabbat. So wine, at the wedding we drink wine because they're going from single to married. So wine, alcohol always represents change, right? Too much wine, too much change. But you get the idea. So for us, interestingly enough, as Jews at least, wine is actually, from our earliest days, always like a holy thing. Right? We don't just get completely out of our minds and get completely wasted, right? It's like, so it's inbuilt inside us as a people, right? That it's like a good thing, and it's kadosh, it's connected to Judaism and God, right? Nachon? Yeah? So even us, later on, we start to, drink wine for fun and stuff, but in our minds, but there's something special about it. It's not just for, getting wasted.
I have a question.
Yes!
Recently, actually, I heard that one of the reasons why women can't wear tefillin or shouldn't is because then other women will see them wear tefillin.
Not true at all.
Yeah, that's what
Not true at all. I'm so pleased.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased you asked that question because there's so much misinformation.
Yeah.
Just because you read on the internet doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah, no, but
Women are obligated. It's another discussion. We mentioned it already. I'll mention it again though, just in this context. Women are not obligated on time-bound mitzvot. Okay? It doesn't mean they're less or more. It's just different. Just like men have certain mitzvot, Kohen have certain mitzvot, women have certain mitzvot, men have certain mitzvot. So anything that is time-bound, mitzvah shazman grama, women are not obligated in it. There are exceptions to that rule. Pesach is an exception because the women were also redeemed from Egypt. Purim is an exception because women were saved at that time as well. Shabbat is an exception. Right? Actually, that's because of Shamor v'Zachor, because they were set together. And because women are obligated, they can't break Shabbat. And since Shamor and Zachor are together, they have to keep Shabbat as well. So it's like kind of like a different route to get there. Okay, and same with Tefillin. Tefillin is a daytime mitzvah. And therefore, women are not obligated in it. Okay? Not better or worse, it's just different. They don't have the mitzvah. That means what a man needs to get by putting on tefillin, women don't need to get because they already have it.
So basically
let me
we're
just,
better?
this is important.
Yeah. You wanna write that down? I said it's not to say that women, right, are any less because they don't have the mitzvah. It means they don't have to do those mitzvot because they already have it. It's inside them. Mitzvot give us benefits. That's why Cohen has his mitzvot. Levi has his mitzvot. A king has his mitzvot. Everyone has their own speaker that does something for them. Some mitzvot everyone has to do, like pray. Everyone's got to do that. Man, woman, child, king, priest, makes no difference. So why don't women have to keep tefillin? And by the way, the Kabbalah even speaks about this and says that tefillin, I don't know what this means, but actually inside the woman's body, right, you have the umbilical cord, these things, that's like, it's inside them already. I don't know what that means. I'm not a Kabbalist. If I was, I'd be charging a lot more for my classes later. You understand that? But it means they don't need that mitzvah because time-bound mitzvot are already inside. They're already attuned to time. They don't need it. So a woman is not obligated in minyan, but she must pray. She has to pray. Everyone's got to pray every single day. Say some words of prayer, of Shabbat, praise to God. Did she have to make a minyan? No. Right? Because that's a time-bound thing. Yes?
So the reason that women have that exemption of not having to be bound to time, is that because they're expected to be mothers and their lives aren't...
That's one of the benefits, but that not maybe the reason. Remember, every mitzvah has a reason and there's benefits. Right? Benefit to Shabbat, I get to hang out with my family. Is that the reason for Shabbat? No. Right? It's still Shabbat if I'm not with my family. So there's benefits to reasons. One of the benefits is the women. But it's connected. Right? Women are such that time itself is something, for some reason, we don't know why, Hashem knows the reason, the women are connected to it so they don't have that need, wherefore men do have that need. Yeah?
Wait, what does that mean, time-bound?
So that's a good question. That's actually a matter of discussion. Time, it could mean a few things. One is, it's a mitzvah that only comes during the daytime, like tefillin or tzitzit. Those mitzvot are only done by day. Some say no. It means mitzvot that only come once a year. Right? It's a time where it's done. Right? You don't have to eat matzah or actually matzah is not a good example, we're not obligated to that as well. But, I don't know, shofar, right? It's time bound, only once a year. It's not 24/7, okay? It's a different opinion. But women are obligated in matzah, and actually, they've become obligated in shofar because they were made that part of their life. So actually, even in shofar, women should go listen to the shofar, okay? But a mitzvah that is time bound, right? Then they wouldn't have to, like tefillin. Tefillin is time bound. It's only daytime. Therefore, women do not need it, right? The benefit that accrues to a person's soul is already in the Jewish woman. That's the correct way to understand it. Just like I don't need to write 2 Torahs, a king does. Why? Because he needs to invest himself in 2 Torahs and have one with him all the time. I don't need to do that. Am I less or worse? No, I just have a different mission.
Okay. So.
Does that help? Is that?
Yeah, no, it actually really does. Because everyone in my old school used to wear tefillin. So,
Wait, really?
yeah.
Really?
No, not everyone, but some people want to reinvent the wheel, so all of a sudden they came to school and then they cut their hair and then they wanted to wear tefillin. So anyway,
By the way, there's 5 women in this class are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Never seen it before. Yeah, there are communities that do
There
that.
are women who wear kippah. I get confused by
no,
that.
school
I
was
love
like
wearing
very
Great neck.
Yeah.
Ain't no women to fill. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh, it's like
Shh, Gisela, go on.
But people want to wear
good
lipstick, so they teachers encourage it. But it doesn't matter.
Right.
Last time, okay, so 2 things. Number 1, what exactly does tefillin give to like a man? Like some spiritual, like what is it?
Okay, so I can't go into it. That's a different topic, and I want to finish this one. But you asked the question. I'll give you the short answer. To fill in comes that a man has to use his physical actions and his physicality and his mind for Hashem. And it's a daily reminder of that. Which means that women have that innately, is the short answer.
Okay, and what
Is
would
the
you
short
say
answer.
to people that do wear tefillin?
I don't say anything. People are free to do whatever they want. I just tell you what Jewish law says.
Yeah.
Okay? And you don't need to. If you need to, and you know what? Halavai, that it would be that we were able to fulfill the mitzvah we had to do without going extra and doing those as well, is what I would say. Unfortunately, nowadays it's become a political statement, which is a great shame because it's a spiritual act. And to lower it into a political statement is a great, great shame. That is the short answer. It is a spiritual act, and to use it as a mega. Is it wrong for women to put on tefillin? No. Actually, there's no forbidden aspect to it as far as I know. Right? But that's not what they have to do. Just like I don't have to go into the temple and bring, work as a Kohen. Do I feel any less? No. I'm okay with that. Right? Actually, I prefer it this way. I'm busy enough. Yeah? I got so much more to tell you. Okay, stick with me another 5 minutes. I want to get through the next piece, and then we can move on to kosher next class, because we only have a few classes left for the end semester. Amen looks sad, by the way. No, that was convincing. Okay, so we said already there's 2 loaves of bread we have on the table. By the way, that is not only for 1 meal, for 3 meals. For 3 meals, we're meant to have 2 loaves of bread. Lechem Mishnah. Okay? Lechem Mishnah. Okay? 2 rolls, 2 challah rolls, or 2 rolls, anything like that, or 2 pita breads. That's it. That's Friday night. That is Shabbat. Lunch, second meal, and Sudah Shlishit, or Shalosh Sudas, as the Ashkenazim call it. You should actually make it on 2 loaves as well, if you're able to. Where does this come from? Where does this come from? And it comes from a very unusual place. Does anyone know, by the way?
I think.
Maytal, hit me.
I think it's whenever, I don't know where the Jews were, like somewhere in the desert.
They were in the desert. Very good.
They didn't have food.
They didn't have food, and what happened?
It like, I forgot what it was called.
You need to know what it's called.
It came down to the ground and it tasted.
It's called the...
Lemon.
It's what?
Men?
Man.
Yeah,
It's
and
called
it
man.
tasted like,
It tasted like whatever you wanted it to taste like.
right.
Man. It is called the man, the manna. Every day, a miraculous food would fall from heaven, and, listen to this very carefully, there would be a level of dew, not Jew, dew that was on the ground. The man would fall on it, and then another layer would come and cover it. So the man was this food that fell for the Jewish people 40 years in the Midbar. There would be a level over there. It would come, and there would be another layer on top of it. Okay? And every day that came, and by nighttime it dissolved, went away, there was nothing in the bank, you had to pray, and the next day it came again. It's actually called the food of faith. Because every day they didn't know it was going to come, and it came. That's how Hashem sustained them in the desert for 40 years. Now, this is the man over here. Now, on Shabbat, were they allowed to leave their tents and go collecting the man that was out in the fields? No, you can't do that on Shabbat. Gathering, collecting, and bringing in and carrying. So what do they eat on Shabbat? Very good. They got a double portion. They got a double portion on Friday. A double portion came on Friday of this lovely man. That double portion, say the rabbi, says Rashi, from the Gemara, we recreate the double portion by having a double portion of bread on Shabbat. I'll write that down. Very possibly in your final examination, that question. If I were to write a question on the 2 loaves of bread, I'd probably ask where we let it out from. So it's the man that came down as a double portion. Okay? Now, one second. What is this all about? This. Does this look familiar to you? Look. Look.
Rainbow.
No. Does this look familiar to you?
Blank.
There's a layer over here. There's a layer on top. Yes, Meital. Oh, very good. Very, very good. Says Valentina and Meital. What's going on over here? There's a cover underneath. There's a cover on top. Look familiar? Shabbat. We cover the bread. You should have a layer underneath, right? A board or something that's not just the table, and we put a cover on top. There's another reason we do that. Anyone know another reason we do that? I'm sure you've heard this before. Yes.
I think it's the thing with the wine.
Yes. Very good.
Like make it jealous.
Excellent. Very, very good. You're absolutely right. What blessing? What blessing should we make? It's actually not weird. I'll explain to you. It will be a very beautiful idea. What blessing should you make first? Bread or wine? In general, if you have bread in front of you or wine in front of you, which one is more important?
Wine, it's more.
I think we do either.
Oh, no.
The bread. No, not just Shabbat. In general. It's Tuesday morning, and you have bread's more important. Hamosi is a more important bracha. Come Friday night, and you got to welcome in the Shabbat first. How do we do that? With wine. So we make the blessing over the wine first. The poor bread. The bread is, it's not, right? Let me ask you a question, Rob. Does bread have feelings? No. Then what are we doing? Are we crazy? It's not for the bread, it's for us. We need to be sensitive. Even to inanimate objects, because it increases our sensitivity. There's many examples in Jewish life and Jewish history where people show great deference to inanimate objects because that affects us. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't allowed to bring out the plague, right, from the sand, right? Why not? The water, because the water saved him, right? So he couldn't turn the Nile to blood. His brother Aaron had to do it. It's water. Sensitivity. Water saved me. I don't want to punish the water. Same with the sand buried the Egyptian. You don't want to throw the sand in the air and bring out the lice. So there's sensitivity. But the main reason is this. Just like the man was covered from on top and underneath, so too it should be covered underneath. Okay? Now actually, we call it challah, but it's not challah. What is challah? Challah, actually, technically speaking, is what you don't eat. You give away. And it was one of the portions given away to the Kohanim. Yeah, because they were the servants of Hashem. It was the truma, the produce of the field that would give away. Now they don't do that. Right? Kohanim don't get to get it now. Mashiach comes, they will. And so we separate it and burn it and remove it. But challah, we call that braided loaf challah. Actually not. Challah, actually the word challah literally means the bit that is separated and given away to the Kohanim as a gift because they didn't work and they were doing the work of Hashem. So we have to support them. Yes?
So what's that piece that we separated for whenever we make
That's challah.
That's
That actually is the word challah.
But isn't that
Biblically speaking, in Torah language, that's challah. We started to call the whole bread that, but actually that's not. That's called lechem mishnah.
but is there a different purpose for it now?
No, it just as a remembrance to that. So we do the we get blessing, separate. It's also a very, very special mitzvah. I can't go into it now. This mitzvah of separating is also very, very special, and does a lot for a woman. She's able to do it. This is not an obligation, right? It's an obligation to eat bread, have double loaf, right? If you make bread more than whatever it's 5 pounds or so flour, then you have separated, right? But there's no obligation to do this. It's a voluntary mitzvah to say if you're making challah, you do it. If you don't make challah, you just buy challah, then you have to do it. But it's a special thing to do if you're able to do it. Okay? So that's the challah. You have to go through the source in your own time, because I have to finish this off. And finally, Shabbat meals. So the bread makes the meals important. And I missed out the punchline. Just like the man was spiritual food, so too the bread on Shabbat, which is compared to the man, as a remembrance of the man, is a spiritual food as well. Okay, that's obviously the connection we're making over here. And that's what we do. We eat special meals on Shabbat, 3 meals. Yep. And we have our finest meats and our finest foods. And really, the more you spend on it, the better it is. Right? Right? The more this is the more praiseworthy, says the Rambam. Right? The Torah of Harizim Shubach. You buy the better foods. It shows you love the mitzvah. And you enjoy it. And actually, on Shabbat, you're given an extra soul, and neshama yetera, and neshama yesera, if you're Ashkenazi. That soul that is given to you as Shabbat enters and increases as you go through Shabbat, actually, allows you to eat more, which you're all familiar with, and drink more, which you're all hopefully not familiar with, and to enjoy the Shabbat even more. That's the extra soul of Shabbat. So we spoke about candles. We spoke about the man. We spoke about the double bread. We spoke about the Shabbat meals as well, right? Those 3 meals are all there to help us enjoy it, and the extra soul we get actually allows, that's why the food on Shabbat tastes better, right? Cholent during the week, but on Shabbat it's got a special taste. And actually, one of the rabbis was approached by Caesar and said, there's a beautiful smell coming from the house. He goes, that's Shabbat food being prepared. He goes, I want to try some. He goes, you won't get it. You'll only enjoy it because we have a special spice we add to the food. And what's that? That's Shabbat. Shabbat is a special spice. It's added and actually makes the food taste better. You enjoy the food on Shabbat more than during the week. Yes, Meital.
So really a valid question. Do calories count on Shabbat?
Great question. I'm asked a lot. Calories do count on Shabbat. Yes, they do.
Our other soul doesn't take it back.
The other soul does not take it back to heaven. Must say Shabbat, it all kicks in. Okay, very good. We did a lot today. Thank you for sticking with it. We will do kosher next class. Have a great day.